the laws concerning holiness. And I've given you these 4 grounds mentioned by Dr. James M. Gray in his Christian Workers' Commentary. So when you come to some law that you don't understand, it's all right to look it up in a commentary or reference work. But sometimes you can figure it out yourself pretty well if you just ask yourself, do you explain this law on hygienic grounds, health grounds, on spiritual grounds, the holiness of the body, on dispensational grounds, or on symbolical grounds? And you'll find that often it'll take at least 2 and maybe 2 or more of these grounds upon which you explain any particular thing. There's someone in the group whose name I want to call. Tell her. Oh, yeah, Miss Combs, be sure to come and see me at the close, please. I forgot the name. All right. Spiritual grounds. And by the way, don't forget, all you old folks are expected to go. If you'd like to go, we'd just love to have you. But you have to call yourself an old person in order to do it. Now, we've got one person here who clearly is old because he's just had an operation, see. We're awful glad he came. He says first time that he's been out. I think it's wonderful the way they have medical science there. They took a bone out of one part and put it in another. Isn't that right? I think that's tremendous. Just thank the Lord for it.
They took a bone out of his head before he had an accident.
Well, I tell you, don't ever try to borrow any bones from Pastor Wood and from the head because he doesn't have any up there. All right, let's come back to this now. You know I'm kidding about all those things, but I'm not kidding about the invitation. On hygienic grounds and spiritual grounds. Then many of these laws are to be explained on dispensational grounds. That is, they were used of God to make Israel distinct from the heathen nations. Under this, you can just print in capital letters one word, separation. That is, the laws were designed to separate God's people from the heathen nations. A good illustration of this is the law about hog meat. You know, most of the meats God told them not to eat, we wouldn't want to eat. But one of the exceptions is hog meat. I don't make that exception myself. It's been a long time since I've eaten any hog meat. I've just felt that pork was not good for me. For a long time I thought that. But I used to eat sausage, particularly this homemade country sausage. I thought that was out of this world. I used to eat that. Even then, we didn't have very much pork served at our house, just occasionally. But hog meat is a good illustration of this. Now, when was this law changed? They couldn't eat pork. They couldn't eat hog meat in Old Testament times. When it was changed? I used to think these laws that were temporary were all changed at the cross, when Jesus died on the cross. No, that's not the complete answer. The complete answer is they were changed when they had fulfilled their purpose. Now, what laws passed away when Jesus died on the cross? The laws about blood sacrifices, because Christ, by his death once for all, satisfied the holiness of God and fulfilled all those sacrifices. And you know, the veil of the temple was rent into from the top to the bottom when Jesus died, which indicated that all the laws about blood sacrifices passed away. See, it was wrong to have your blood sacrifices after Jesus died, because he'd already fulfilled those blood sacrifices. But what about hog meat? There's a passage in Mark 7, 18 and 20, which explains this kind of thing. Mark 7, 18 and 20. Jesus says, "Perceive ye not that whatsoever from without goeth into the man, it cannot defile him?" And then Mark adds this comment. "This he said." Do you know what words come after that? "This he said, making all meats clean." Isn't that significant? This he said, making all meats clean. because those laws had already fulfilled their purpose. When did it become all right for Jews to eat hog meat? You say after the cross. No, before the cross. Because the laws about hog meat had already fulfilled their purpose. And the purpose was to separate Israel from the surrounding nations. You see, if you're going to keep a people separate, one of the simplest ways to do it is to regulate their diet. You know how it is when you older folks are on a diet. It kind of separates you from others. Just the fact you're on a diet. That's certainly true for me. I go to certain places where I take folks and I can follow my diet there. But, I had my heart attack back in 1986, and I'm just almost sure. See, that was, the heart attack came 3 days before Christmas. And I'd been getting Christmas candy and all, and before I just said, well, I won't break over except at Christmas time. And then I'd say, well, now, after Christmas is over, then I'll go back to the other. I think that's one thing that caused a heart attack, because my sister each Christmas used to send me delicious chocolates. Oh, I mean, they were out of this world. And when she sent me a whole box, naturally I was obligated to eat the whole box, So I ate the box. I think that's one thing that brought on my heart attack. I think there were other things before led up to it. But that whole kind of thing. But you separate people from others and regulate their diet. When Dad and I went to Palestine, we came back, sailed from Beirut, Syria, to Brindisi, Italy. And there in the dining room, I noticed that one group was at a table all by themselves, and I noticed they seemed to be eating something different than the rest of us. They were Orthodox Jews, and they were eating kosher killed meat and things like that. Well, you see, they were automatically separated from the rest of us. Not that they ought to be today, but they were, see? And that's one of the simplest ways to separate people. But remember, holiness in the food you eat is a very important principle. And it may vary in individual cases, but everybody needs to commit his appetite to the Lord. To eat enough and not to eat too much, and that's a fine line sometimes. But God will guide if we really wanted to be guided by him. All right, Mark 7:18 and 20. This, he said, making all meats clean, because the diet regulations had to do particularly with separating Israel from the other nations. Then, when the book of Acts comes, at Pentecost, God sends his people out all over the world. And you see, then, they couldn't be on restricted diets and not eat certain foods. Like missionaries today, missionaries have to change their diets a lot when they go to the mission field. That's one reason why it's very difficult to get accustomed to those things. And that's one reason why a lot of folks, mission societies, don't want older people much going as missionaries, because they have to get accustomed to diet and everything else. All right, that's the third thing. Then the fourth, many laws are to be explained on symbolical grounds. That is, they were designed to be object lesson reminders of spiritual truths. Let me give you one general illustration of this, and then two specific illustrations. The general illustration is that the animals they were permitted to eat generally were of clean habits. Now, of course, that's true relatively speaking. Animals don't have clean habits when you contrast them with human beings. But some animals are a whole lot cleaner in their habits than other animals are. And generally speaking, the animals God allowed them to eat were animals that had clean habits. Then let me give you the two specific illustrations. I think one I mentioned in another connection is Deuteronomy 22, verse 10. Deuteronomy 22:10 says, "Thou shalt not plow with an ox and an ass together." Well, that's just good common sense, because an ox and an ass won't plow well together. But God took that common sense thing and he made it a sin if you plowed with an ox and ass together. It was on symbolical grounds. 2 Corinthians 6:14, "Be not unequally yoked with unbelievers." Of course, one application of this in the Bible that's clear is don't marry an unsafe person. That's one application of it. But a great application is don't run with the wrong crowd. Boy, young folks, I want to tell you, everybody needs that. Don't run with the wrong crowd. You can run with the wrong crowd in any place. don't ask me to name what I think's the wrong crowd here at this school. Because frankly, I think in the past I might have been able to name it some, I don't know. Well, I don't think I could name it. But I don't care what the group is. Any Bible school you go to, some of you may be going to Bible school, Bible college, Christian college. At any school, you can run the wrong crowd. And it used to be when I taught at Columbia Bible College, I'd see some students that seemed to be going on with the Lord, and then I'd watch them on the campus, always running with the same crowd. No, don't run with the wrong crowd. And that's unequal yoke with unbelievers. And that's one reason why God gave this command. The ox was ceremonially clean. The ass was ceremonially unclean. They couldn't eat the ass, the donkey. They could eat the ox. One's clean, one's the unclean. They could offer the ox as sacrifice to the Lord. They couldn't offer a donkey to the Lord. One was ceremonially unclean. Don't put the clean and the unclean under the same yoke together. And of course, one way in which this is often violated is a person says, well, I'm going to run with unsaved people in order to win them. Well, you obey the Lord, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. And if God wants you to win unsaved people to the Lord, he doesn't want you to violate this. Thou shalt not plow with an ox and an ass together. The second specific illustration is Deuteronomy 25, verse 4. Deuteronomy 25, verse 4 says, Thou shalt not muzzle the ox when he treadeth out the grain. Well, you see the reason for this. Let the old ox eat something. Don't put a muzzle on his mouth. Let him eat something when he tramples out the grain. And you can see the common sense reason for that. Then 1 Corinthians 9 to 14 in the New Testament quotes this. And 1 Corinthians 9 to 14 says, Even so did the Lord ordain that they that proclaim the gospel should live of the gospel. In other words, pay the preacher his salary. Give money to those who are in Christian work. And in many churches, and it's an amazing thing, oftentimes churches that have a bigger income than others are stingier when it comes to giving to some of these missionaries who go around and seek to get prayer helpers and seek to get missionary help, contributions for their work. They find that often the poor churches give more to them than the richer churches do. It's an amazing thing. But, they say this one man seemed to pray all the time, Lord, bless our preacher. You keep him holy and we'll keep him poor. Say, oh, no, don't muzzle the ox when he treadeth out the grain. See, that's for symbolical reasons. All right, review a moment. Whenever you come to one of these laws and you don't understand it, review these 4 reasons, and even before you read a commentary, see if you can find one or more reasons from these 4 that are given to explain these particular laws. On page 73, the laws concerning food in chapter 11 show how the contents of this chapter are related to the central message of Leviticus. It's no accident that the laws about food are the first of the laws. First of the laws. Are you living a holy life? What do you eat? What are your eating habits? All those eating habits are very important in related to holiness. I like to call this holiness at the table, holiness in the dining room. No Christian rises any higher than his life at the table. What you are at the table when you let down the bars is what you really are. And I think that's a heart searcher for anybody. You say, oh, now look at what he eats. Maybe he shouldn't. You better judge for yourself, because there's an awful lot of things involved with other people. But sometimes when I'm ready to go out for a meal, I'm careful to eat something before I go, just so I'll be sure and not act like a hog when I'm at the table. And, usually I eat one main meal a day. And that main meal can be of pretty good proportions, but I'm a little careful to eat it privately rather than out before people. They don't understand. And any preacher needs to watch that. Because some preachers just, I don't know, he can't preach very well, but man, he sure can eat. I'm telling you, that preacher sure can eat. The laws concerning food, holiness at the table. Then chapter 12 is the laws of purification. What reasons can you suggest for these laws of purification? Show why the Hebrew mother was to purify herself when a child was born. Review the first suggestion and remember that these laws of purification were marvelously designed to keep basic truths before the minds of the people. I think that the laws of purification can be explained on two grounds. The first is hygienic grounds, for the good, the health of the mother. God gave these laws of purification for the health of the mother. And then the second is on symbolical grounds. You know, when a baby's born, is an awfully good time to drive home spiritual truths, because that's a big event in the life of family. You know, when a couple's married, that's a big event. And then when the first child's born, that's a big event. And the next child's born, that's a big event. And I think for any couple that really is true to the Lord, each child being born is just as big an event as the first one. I believe it's true. And it's a big event. And you see, God reminded them of these spiritual truths when this big event took place of a child being born. Now, on symbolical grounds, I want to mention two things. The first is a reminder of the fact that children are born in sin. Oh, that child looks so precious and is so precious, but that child has a sinful heart. That child's born in sin. Psalm 51:7. Born in sin and shapen in iniquity. Oh, how we need to remind ourselves of that. In other words, what should be your attitude when a new baby comes into the family? Should it be one of joy? Yes, joy, but not frivolous joy. It should be one of solemn joy. Because this baby is born in sin. And this baby can grow up and reject Christ and go to hell. Oh, how we need that. See, that's just the opposite of the way the world welcomes the birth of a child. Are you all familiar with the idea of passing around cigars? You know, the man said, all right, pass around cigars now. You got a new baby in the family. I saw a cartoon once, showed a picture of people, these cigars, and they were exploding. Explosive cigars, and under it was a little caption that said, he's mad because it was a girl. And so he passed around these explosive cigars. Well, that's the way the world welcomes the birth of a newborn child. No, not pass around cigars. Not frivolous joy, but solemn joy. One of the old Puritans was asked one time, whom do you think this baby looks like? And he shook his head in a very solemn way and he said, very much like Adam, ma'am. Very much like Adam. Well, I don't do that. You know, I love the Puritans and I want to have the good qualities of the Puritans, but no, I rejoice with parents over those precious children God's given, but at the same time, I want it to be solemn joy and not frivolous joy. See how valuable this was. It was a reminder of the fact, oh, we got a new baby in the family. Yeah, but that child's born in sin and shapen in iniquity. And he can grow up to reject Christ and can go to hell forever. Then, the second thing I want to mention about symbolical grounds is it was a reminder of the original fall. We say Adam and Eve fell into sin. But you know, according to this scripture and the passage I'm going to quote from 1 Timothy 2:14, it's not as accurate to say the fall of Adam and Eve. That's the way we usually say it. No, that isn't the way the Bible presents it. Not the fall of Adam and Eve. The Bible presents it, the fall of Eve and Adam. See, chronologically it took place like that. And that's the way the Bible mentions it. Because 1 Timothy 2:14 says, and Adam was not beguiled, but the woman being beguiled hath fallen into transgression. And you see, I used to think, why should the Jewish mother purify herself twice as much when a little girl baby was born, 66 days, as she did for a boy baby, 33 days? Well, you know, we usually think about those dirty little boys and those clean little girls. But see, this is the opposite here, because it took them back to the original fall. Eve was the first one who fell. And really, the Bible doesn't present the fall of Adam and Eve, it presents the fall of Eve and Adam. And you keep that in mind when you think of woman's place in God's plan. You take all these women who are marching today for women's rights and all, they're really degrading womanhood the way they're doing it. They want to exalt womanhood, they're really degrading womanhood when they do that kind of thing, and they don't believe the Bible, because the Bible talks about the fall of Eve and Adam. You read that verse in its context. 1 Timothy 2, verse 14. The head of every family tree was a thief who ate the forbidden fruit. I like to compare Leviticus 12, verse 8 with Luke 2:24. Leviticus 12:8, Luke 2:24. This child is born in sin. This is a reminder of the fact, in the original fall. But then Mary, the mother of Jesus, offered a sacrifice. And you notice she offered 2 turtle doves, a young pigeon, because that was the sacrifice of the poor. That's how we know that Jesus was born in a poor family. I used to think he was born in a poor family. We know it because he was the son of a carpenter, the adopted son of a carpenter. No, carpenters then sometimes made a lot of money, just as carpenters today sometimes make a lot of money. But we know it because Mary offered the sacrifice of the poor. But you say, Jesus was born without sin. He wasn't born in sin. No, but this was a reminder of the fact that she was a sinful woman, giving birth to the sinless Son of God. Boy, how strong passage that is against Roman Catholicism. You know what Roman Catholics mean by the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. You know, some Protestants think they believe Immaculate Conception, that Jesus was born without sin. No, that's not that doctrine. We all believe that if we believe the Bible. Christ was born without sin. Immaculate Conception means that the Virgin Mary was born without sin. No, she had to offer sacrifice. And she didn't offer sacrifice for her son because he wasn't born in sin. But she offered a sacrifice for herself, that she was a sinful woman, even though she gave birth to the sinless Son of God. All right, the laws of purification, I think, are to be explained on hygienic grounds, health grounds, and also on symbolical grounds. I'll come back the next time to chapters 13 and 14 on page 73, but turn to 74 and let me answer this one question at the top of the page. The analogies between leprosy and sin. Underscore, please, these things. First, the hereditary nature of leprosy and sin. When we say leprosy is hereditary, we mean that susceptibility is hereditary, and that the child of a leper is especially vulnerable to leprosy. Sometimes doctors say leprosy is familial. It runs in the family. It doesn't mean that because a parent's a leper, the child's born as a leper. No, but he's born with a weakness towards leprosy. He's born with a tendency towards leprosy. And of course, in a far more real way than that, every child is born in sin and shapen in iniquity. Let me ask you, have you ever confessed your original sin to the Lord? Your original sin. You know what theologians mean by original sin? Is the sin nature that you inherit from Adam and Eve through your mother and father, through your ancestors. You say, no, I don't need to confess that. In the sin offering, that's the main thing they confessed, what they were. See? And somebody said, well, now, wait a minute, that wasn't my fault. And, well, if Heavenly God is saying if you've been in the place of Eve and Adam, you've done the same thing yourself. One thing he's saying, but when you realize you're a sinner before God, you don't try to defend yourself in any of those things. Anything. You even confess your own original sin. your sin nature. Oh, I tell you folks, I'm tempted. You say, sometimes you're especially tempted. Yeah, but I'm tempted every second out of every minute, out of every hour, and every day. Because I'm a fallen creature. I have a sinful heart. And oh, I'm so glad that the blood of Jesus covers that, what I am. Covers what I am. The progressiveness of leprosy and sin. Leprosy usually has very small beginnings. And often you can't tell when you just look at a person that he's a leper at the beginning. Often they say that leprosy begins with a numb spot in the hand, in the center of the hand. And then it's progressive. It just spreads. People often use the words smooth leprosy and rough leprosy. Smooth leprosy is leprosy in its early stages. Rough leprosy is leprosy in its later stages. Sir William Thompson wrote this great book on Bible backgrounds. I have it in 3 great big volumes. And he said it was an amazing thing the first time he ever saw a leper. He saw lepers who had leprosy in the later stages. He said one just had a hole here where the eye was. The leprosy had eaten it away. And by the way, be sure you surrender to the Lord your refinement when you come to something like this. My pastor, Dr. King, used to describe leprosy in detail. Oh, some of the members of the congregation didn't like it. Remember, he said, oh, it just nauseates you. I tell you, she wouldn't have minded if she really wanted to know what sin was. And leprosy is certainly a picture of what sin does. God not only hates sin because of what it is, but he hates sin because of what it becomes. And here's leprosy, just a numb spot. Yeah, but look, no eye here. And then Sir William Thompson said that he saw some of them as they tried to wave their hands to keep people from coming to them. They were to cry unclean, and said that they had nothing but stubs up there because the leprosy had just eaten away the bones of their hands. And then they tried to cry out, unclean, unclean, but said they could only gurgle because the roofs and the palates of their mouths had just been eaten away. Oh, folks, what a picture that is of the progressiveness of sin. I remember the little poem that says, "'Twas but a little drop of sin we saw this morning enter in, and lo, at eventide a world is drowned." And young folks, when you're tempted to sin now, remember God hates that, but he hates it because of what it becomes also. Then the incurableness of leprosy and sin. Leprosy in Bible times was incurable by human means. And even today, I don't think doctors will talk about leprosy being cured. It's arrested. Is that the word they use? Symptom-free rather than cured. Or leprosy is arrested. The first analogy between leprosy and sin is the deadening effect of leprosy and sin. Leprosy numbs the body. Sin numbs the soul. Leprosy numbs the body. Sin loves the soul. Now be sure to surrender your refinement to the Lord on this, because this is a terrible kind of thing, but I want you to see what it means. In one leper colony, the lepers came to the missionary and they asked to be sure to have cats around at night. He said, yes, we're glad to have the cats, but why do you want them? He said, you know, some of our fellow lepers who've been numb, these parts of the body attacked by leprosy have been numb, and they've waked up the next morning and their fingers have been chewed off by the rats, and they haven't even waked up. They haven't even felt it. My, that's a horrible thing, isn't it? Boy, just as leprosy numbs the body, sin numbs the soul. Every time I sin, I say make myself less capable of knowing how terrible sin is. And every time you sin, you make yourself less capable of knowing how terrible sin is in the nostrils of a holy God. God hates sin. because it numbs the soul. I remember one of my relatives was talking to another relative once and said, you know, I used to do some things that hurt my conscience. Well, said, they don't hurt my conscience anymore. I just do them, they don't even hurt my conscience. See, sin numbs the soul, just as leprosy numbs the body. All right, let's have our prayer. Now will you just offer this prayer to the Lord from Psalm 51:7. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Wash me and I shall be whiter than the whitest thing. Let me say this prayer aloud and then ask you to pray it aloud with me. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Everybody pray it out loud with me together. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. Now when you ask him, thank him he does it. And that he'll continue to do it. In Jesus' name, amen.